What are some truths some parents refuse to accept? There's a time when you need to let your kids make mistakes so they can learn from them. Life is pretty short, so if they have a goal, let them go for it. And meet those mistakes with dialogue, conversation, understanding, and help, not blind rage, shouting, punishment, or hostility. That sometimes their kids have valid opinions, and instead of interrupting them and pulling the "because I said so and that's just how it is" cards, they could listen to their child and make them feel heard instead of suppressed. Your child's mental health doesn't care about your worries of looking like a bad parent. If you get them help, it will continue to get worse the longer you neglect them. And that you are a bad parent if you do not get your child the help they need and deserve. You as a parent are responsible for teaching your kids proper manners and common decency, not their teachers, tutors, babysitters, etc. I briefly worked as a Japanese teacher, and I was surprised at how little some of these parents were involved in their kids' lives and expected me to address all their problems during the short few hours I had them for the week. That you are responsible for your kids. Yes, you need to feed them, clothe them, provide shelter, love them, etc. It's amazing how many parents don't want to do some of those or feel like it's a burden to do those. Like, they wanted you to exist, you didn't even choose to live, so they should either be responsible or not a parent. Their children have their own hopes and dreams, their own beliefs. A very good friend is leading an entirely second life to keep her mother from controlling her or belittling her decisions. It's very stressful to not encourage their children to find themselves. Oof, I led an entirely second life for years. It was hard, but not as hard as dealing with my mom's reaction to me being who I am. I kept it up until I had kids and physically couldn't anymore without putting them in a yucky situation. There's been a huge falling out, but I moved across the country and am really enjoying life. I hope not to repeat the pattern. Apologizing won't kill you. It's better to be respected than feared. Your kids can have different opinions than you. You can be a parent and a friend. Would be great if my dad apologized for something. Hasn't done that in years. If your kid needs help, speech therapy, tutoring, medication, occupational therapy, ACT, it is not a reflection on you personally. Sometimes kids struggle. That's okay. Making sure your kid has all the tools they need to succeed is your responsibility as a parent. I worked in a charity for people who had attempted suicide. One parent was highly in denial and claimed that her kid confused her sleeping pills with candy and got sick. Twice. Once in elementary school and again in high school. That some kids can't help them with some of their struggles, hardships, and that some kids have depression and it may not be a phase. I feel like the signs of depression and other mental illnesses in kids needs to be talked about more. I didn't get treatment until my 30s and thought it was just something I had been suffering from for a few years. Looking back, I've had anxiety and depression pretty much my entire life and I had absolutely no idea. The signs were there, but I can see why my parents missed them. Your kid is an individual. There is a good chance that their interests, hobbies, and passions are going to be different from yours. Support and encourage your kids to be themselves and not a mini you. Also, for the love of God, have a conversation about how you and your partner plan on raising your kid. My parents had such drastically different and bad in their own ways parenting styles. It was really confusing. Reading this thread made me want to share a quote I heard a long time ago. When they are little, treat the small things like big things, because if you don't, when they are older, they won't share the big things with you. The small things are big to them, can't remember. Reading this thread made me realize how freaking awesome my parents are and how freaking lucky I am. That your children may turn out completely different to you. Different interests, different hobbies, different ideologies, different religions. Don't get pissy at your kid because he likes reading instead of football. Or if your kid likes football and not reading. 1. That we aren't always going to be your baby. 2. You are not always right. 3. Sometimes we don't tell you the full truth for a reason, like it backfiring on us and making the whole situation worse for us in every way, shape and form. Your kid doesn't ever really belong to you. They are just another human who has their own life. You're just responsible for helping them figure out life. That when kids grow up, they will enjoy spending time with you if you treat them like a friend. They will not enjoy spending time with you if you continue to act like an authority figure or someone who knows better. The reward for good parenting is a friendship with your adult child. Some parents need to accept that a whole day of shopping with the little kid isn't realistic, and that instead, you just need to do what you can and take them home if they're screaming and crying, especially if they're little. Little kids especially have a limit. They won't be able to handle a full day of shopping for a while. Don't push the kid to the point of screeching, screaming, and crying and expect them to continue. It makes them, you and everybody else miserable. TLDR. Just take your kid home when they're tired. Little kids, baby, early elementary age, have a timer. It usually lasts about 3/4 of a restaurant meal with the family, 2 stores at the mall, or half a boring errand, DMV, medical appointment, car repair, etc. Plan accordingly. An easy way to get your child to start lying to you is by accusing them of lying when your kid is telling you the truth. Kid says something that is true. Parent, stop lying. Kid repeats the same true statement. Parent, I told you to stop lying. Kid now tells a lie the parent wants to hear. Parent, there, doesn't it feel good to tell the truth? However, since you were lying earlier, I am going to punish you. That they are the ones who demanded participation trophies, not their kids. They just don't want anyone else's kid to get one. My mom has several participation trophies from the 1960s. That their children are dickheads. Oh no, my James would never do something like that. Well, he did, and he's a prick. Spoiling your kid too much can leave them really unprepared for the real world. They can end up really useless, or a complete butthole who genuinely thinks the world revolves around them. At some point you need to teach them they aren't king queen of the world. They need to fend for themselves eventually. You can either raise your kids and spoil your grandkids, or spoil your kids and raise your grandkids. That there comes a point where your kids grow up and you will start to see them as peers, sharing stories that are vulnerable, asking for advice. But once you do that, you're not the boss of them anymore. You can't talk about your bad sex life with your adult kid while also ripping on them for not finishing college or whatever. This one thing my parents did. Pretty strict growing up where and when they needed to be. After turning 18 they pretty much stopped enforcing rules on me and just kinda let me do my own thing. It was weird seeing my dad going from this hardness on rules to pretty much wanting to be my buddy. Just because you did your best does not mean it wasn't still bad and or a traumatic childhood. Source: 26-year-old a mom that hates I go to therapy because she did her best. That thing aren't the same as they were when they grew up. I'm so tired of explaining to my boomer parents that I'm not wasting my money on a luxury apartment. $1,800/month is the new norm for where I live. I have an average apartment and am paying average rent. They somehow don't realize that rent is no longer $600 a month. ADHD is a real thing. I mentioned to a co-worker my ADHD and he was like, nah, that's not real. A doctor tried to tell me my son has it and I was like, no. Paraphrased. I couldn't get into it at the time, but I wish I could have. It's absolutely real and crippling if you don't know how to manage it. Crap, even with meds and therapy it's crippling sometimes. I'm sorry little dude. I hope your dad comes around and accepts it one day. That poor kid. Sex education is a good thing. Even today, there are parents out here who refuse to have the talk with their kids. If they do, there's a great deal of fear, shame, and religious dogma thrown into the mix. The talk is awkward for both parties, but in the end everybody's better off for it. Teenage girls have real and valid emotions. They're not just on their period every time they're upset. They're not inherently harder to raise than teenage boys. They're not just because their body is changing, because they have male friends, or because they are wearing a tank top. That giving them attention is actually good for them and not bad. Kids need affection and to be shown they are important, and that does not mean they are being spoiled. Adding on, no amount of hugs growing up guarantees they'll want to be hugged as they get older. As heartbreaking as it can feel as a parent, a 12-year-old might not want to give you a hug ever. It doesn't mean they don't love you. It means they show affection in a different way. You are not raising kids, You are raising the adult they are going to be. Stop letting them do butthole things and excusing it because it's cute and they're just being kids. No, you're teaching them that those things are okay. They have no concept of this is only cute because I'm 5. They just think it's okay. Parents seem to forget that a ton of learning to be a human is imitation, trial and error, and figuring it out by trying. It's like they think if I did not explicitly teach them to do or not do that thing, then they did not learn the thing. Oh, they learned. They're watching you, testing you, pushing limits, learning. You have to treat every situation with at least a dash of, will just letting this one go teach them a lesson that's going to be heck to you and teach? I know you don't want your kid to be disrespectful to you, but if you accuse your child of being disrespectful, but your child was not intentionally being disrespectful to you, your child may decide to intentionally be disrespectful to you in the future. Example, if you accuse your kid of swearing and your kid wasn't swearing, all of your plans for how you will raise your child and how they will turn out are garbage. Nothing will come close to your plans and dreams, because they are yours, not the kids. If you decide to have more kids, basing how they will behave or act and what they will do on the earlier kid is also garbage. Even if they're twins, they're individuals with their own personalities. That your kid could come out as gay no matter how you bring them up. If you aren't willing to accept, and I use this term lightly, that risk, and you see abandonment or violence as an appropriate response, maybe it's best you don't have children. That it's their responsibility to raise the child, as they decided to have them and have to accept the things you need to do to properly raise them. It's not the child's fault that they are there. They didn't have a choice. The parents did. Being a parent doesn't make you an expert at everything. During college I was in a class where everyone else was a middle-aged mom. Whenever I said anything that contradicted them I was told I didn't know anything because I didn't have kids. Once I told one of them she was annoying for always bringing up her kids as if that was gonna change the facts and she dead but replied, annoying? You don't know anything about annoying. I have 3 kids. Come back to me when you've dealt with 3 toddlers and then we can talk about annoying. I can't make this crap up. My mother was like, she thought having a kid somehow gave her mystical powers and she was always right about everything and somehow knew everything. It was annoying to deal with. Just because you bathed me, clothed me and saw me naked as a baby toddler does not mean you have the right to barge in when I'm in the middle of a shower or getting ready after a shower. Their children are people who need privacy just like they do. I don't understand this. By the time my kids were like 5 I always knocked, etc. It teaches them boundaries and respect for each other's privacy and space. That if you abused their kids you abuse them. You can't go back and say, oh I don't remember doing that, it wasn't that bad, to a traumatic memory a child, grown or not, has brought back up because that memory never freaking left them. The axe forgets but the tree remembers. You cannot really control a person who's older and realized how much agency they have. Financial dependency is one thing that might stop young adults from disobeying their parents, but at the end of the day you can't be forced to do anything you don't want to. Some parents think they can control every aspect of their kid's life and pushing for that is exactly what results in kids leaving the second they can. That they were abusive or neglectful even if they didn't mean to be, and that they should have gone to therapy instead of having kids for validation. I wish parents would more often acknowledge their flaws and mistakes in their parenting, but the same people that are vocal about children needing to get over it because they are now adults are probably terrible parents anyways. It is incredibly fricked up to have a kid in hopes it will make one or both parents straighten up and fly right. Don't give your kid the crappy task of saving you or your partner before they are even born. Raising your kid doesn't make you a superhero, goddess, badass, or anything else but a parent. I understand parenting is rough and we have no social safety net, but I'm not all that impressed by people who choose parenthood and constantly want headbutts for it. Some people just don't like physical affection. If your child doesn't like being hugged and or kissed, chances are they won't suddenly love it when they're older. No, I did not break up the family by going no contact. You broke it yourself when you started abusing me and accusing me of being responsible for everything that you are not happy with. Oh, I got this one too. Along with I'm sorry you feel that way. Not I'm sorry for my actions causing you to have anxiety and depression and ongoing nightmares about the abuse. I hate Christmas because it's so family centric and mine are buttholes. Still better than being in contact and getting more abuse though. 1. Most children don't just cut their parents out of their life for no good reason. When that happens, the parents have either fricked up big time or have been treating their child poorly for years. Sincerely, a 28-year-old woman who hasn't talked to her mother for 2.5 years. 2. Parents need to understand and accept that their child is an individual with their own unique personality, needs, interests and goals before the child is born. If a potential parent can't accept a child as being different than what they wanted or expected, they are not ready to have a child. That your parents messed you up in ways they didn't see coming. Their parents did the same to them, and you will do the same to your kids. That having intelligent children does not mean they're obligated to use that intelligence if it doesn't make them happy. Doing the basic things for your child, taking them to the dentist, buying them clothes, feeding them isn't something that the child needs to repay later in life. Those are just the basic things you need to do because they are your responsibility. My mom is a preschool teacher, and almost every year she has at least one kid with something going on mentally, developmentally, ADHD, autism, sometimes even more severe issues. She's learned to identify it based on how developed the kid is when they first come to her class, and how they progress, as well as years of experience seeing both neurotypical kids and diagnosed neurodivergent ones. More often than not, the parents of the ones who haven't already been diagnosed are in full denial. My mom is not allowed to straight up say I think your kid is autistic, because she's not a medical professional, but she is allowed to suggest the kid is developmentally different and that they should get tested for X, Y, and Z. Who their kids are, and I don't just mean if they are gay, trans, etc. Just in general really. Prime example for me had always been that my parents were so geeked up on the idea of me being a lawyer, then a business owner. When I went into business in college, I even used to try and write stories and they swore I'd be the next big writing, instead of accepting, like a majority of other kids. I had no clue. I was and still am trying to figure life and crap out, but mainly that I am okay, just making a steady living, having a small bit decent sized 1-bedroom apartment. I'm not on drugs, don't have kids, no string not bad relationships, and I'm still finding my path. But yay, for my parents they could never accept that, and would get critical as heck over any choice or time I expressed liking something that didn't align with their vision of my greatness. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.